Ever feel like you're just completely burnt out? Like you're constantly spinning your wheels but not really getting anywhere? Well, it turns out that's not just a 21st century problem. Today, we're going to dig into a solution from way back in 1896 that feels, honestly, more relevant than ever. It's from this little book by Andrew Murray called Waiting on God, and it absolutely flips our modern ideas about success and effort right on their head. So, let's dive in. So Murray just comes right out of the gate with this incredibly bold statement. He doesn't waste any time. He's basically saying that the root of all our spiritual struggles isn't that we're not trying hard enough, but that we've got a fundamental misunderstanding, or maybe just a lack of knowing God himself. And this one sentence, it's the bedrock for everything else he's about to say. And you've got to understand, Murray wasn't just being some armchair philosopher here. As a pastor, he was seeing this problem with his own eyes, in his own community. He saw good people giving it everything they had, but their spiritual lives just felt weak and wilted. So his solution wasn't try harder or do more. No, it was something else entirely. Something pretty radical, actually. All right, so let's dig into that diagnosis a little deeper. What exactly did he see? What did he mean by a faith that had grown feeble? He was looking at sincere, devoted people who were just constantly frustrated. Despite all their best efforts, their prayers, their hard work, they still felt spiritually weak, like they were always failing, never quite living up to what they believed. It was a faith that was just marked by total exhaustion and disappointment. And this is where Murray really turns the whole thing on its head. Instead of asking, okay, what are you doing wrong? He reframes the entire question. He asks, what's the matter? Don't you have God? It's a complete shift in focus, right? Away from our performance and our failures and back to the source of all power. And that leads us straight to the core of his diagnosis. So if a lack of effort isn't the problem, then what is? Well, Murray argues it's all about the wrong kind of effort. And this is the crucial point. The problem wasn't laziness, not at all. It was actually the opposite. People were relying way too much on their own strength, their own brilliant plans, their own intellect, their own willpower. Does that sound familiar? It's basically the 19th century version of hustle culture, and according to Murray, it's a guaranteed recipe for burnout and failure. And he gets even more specific. He says that even the good things, like our well-intentioned plans or the truths we think we understand perfectly, can actually become roadblocks. Our own willing and running, as he puts it, our sheer hustle, can literally get in the way of what God wants to do. Okay, so if trying harder on our own is the problem, what's the cure? This brings us to the central and, pretty radical idea of the whole book, the practice of waiting on God. Now, we have to be super clear about this definition. When Murray says waiting, he does not mean passively sitting around doing nothing, not even close. It's an active posture. It's the art of yielding, of admitting we can't do it on our own, and intentionally making space for God to work. It's about choosing a state of complete and constant dependence. This chart here really lays it out side by side. On the left, you've got our striving. That's our default mode, right? It's all self-will, frantic running and willing, fueled by our own limited human energy. And the result? Impatience. But now, look at the right side. That's God's working. Self-will gets replaced by divine will. Our running is met with God's mercy. Impatience gives way to patience, and our flimsy human energy gets swapped out for real divine power. It's a total shift from I do to he does. And to make this even clearer, Murray uses this amazing analogy from nature. He's like, just look around you. He points to Psalm 104, where all of creation, from the lions to the birds, is described as waiting upon their creator for everything they need. He's saying this state of dependence isn't a sign of weakness. It's the fundamental design of all reality. Okay, so the concept is powerful, it makes sense, but what does it actually look like in real life? How do we do this? Well, the very first, most important piece of the puzzle is silence. Murray really emphasizes being silent unto God. And this isn't just about not talking. It's about intentionally quieting all that internal noise, the anxieties, the to-do lists, the constant planning, to create some real internal stillness. He breaks it down into these 4 practical steps. First, be silent. Just quiet your own mind. Second, and this one's huge, acknowledge your own helplessness. You have to confess that your own efforts just aren't enough. Third, you've got to trust his timing, which, requires a whole lot of patience. And finally, you listen. You actually wait for guidance that doesn't come from your own brain, but from God. So, what's the payoff? If we actually do this, if we engage in this practice of waiting, what's the result? What's his Marie promise is going to happen? He points directly to this incredibly powerful passage from Isaiah. And for Murray, this isn't just some beautiful, poetic idea. He sees it as a rock-solid promise. The result of waiting isn't weakness or inactivity. It's a renewed, divine kind of strength, a strength that doesn't run out. And the results he talks about are, well, they're comprehensive. This isn't just about feeling a little less stressed. He's talking about really tangible things, like renewed strength for your life and actual divine guidance when you have no idea which way to turn. It's about finding patience and hope, even getting victory over those nagging struggles, and finding real deliverance. But all of this, he says, flows from the main prize, a deeper, more real, more intimate knowledge of God himself. All right, let's bring this all home by looking at the core paradox of Murray's whole message, which is, believe me, just as challenging today as it was back in 1896. So think about it. Everything in our culture screams at us to do more, be productive, hustle harder, be self-reliant. Murray's message is the exact polar opposite. He argues that real spiritual power, real effectiveness is found in surrendering our own efforts and completely embracing our dependence on God. And this quote just captures it perfectly. God's power doesn't just give our own efforts a little boost. No, it takes over at the precise point where our human energy gives out and fails. The end of our striving is the beginning of his working. And that kind of leaves us with a final question to just sit with. In a world that prizes constant action, a world that is so noisy, what have we lost by forgetting the power of stillness? What might we rediscover if we actually learned, like Murray suggests, to simply wait on God?